good afternoon. Yeah, we can say good afternoon now. Hi, everybody, and welcome to the BSCEXPO. The following presentation is going to be on the subject of HDR and the color-managed workflow, and I'm going to try to explain you why actually I don't separate these two things one from another. You know, some of my experiences I had over the past 2 years by working on different HDR projects. Some of you that have been coming regularly to the BSCEXPO have probably seen our presentation back in 2015, where we have shown for the first time to the UK audience how HDR looks like. We have presented Dolby Vision, and that time we said this is something really exciting that's coming and it's going to happen. I think we are seeing like actually this technology is continuing to thrive. The following year, we have opened in conjunction with Warner Brothers Delane Lee, very first grading space or post-production finishing space that was dedicated entirely or purely for HDR. So that basically we have set a room, even with like a Dolby Atmos for home users, basically to be able to master in what we thought was the best standard for picture and for sound finishing, and have since worked on many, many projects. This year, we can say, what's coming is that definitely the two main players for streaming, Netflix and Amazon, have given us their firm confirmation that HDR is the way to go for them, and that they do want all of their original productions to be finished in that standard. So they have completely committed to it, even though the amount of screens out there is not very high. They just see it basically as a standard that's going to preserve the picture quality, and we can see that the screens are coming up more and more, and that people are starting to view at home HDR more and more. It's definitely here to stay, and many of you are probably going to end up working on these projects. They're coming more to the UK to produce the originals here as well, and the shows will have to be finished in HDR. And I'm now talking primarily to the kind of cinematographer audience here. It is very good for you guys to kind of prepare yourself if you're going to shoot for HDR, to understand that it is going to have to be adjusted. Nothing's going to happen with your camera, but you just have to adjust a little bit your workflow in order to be able to deliver a picture in that kind of fantastic format. So I thought, before I was preparing this presentation, I said, what would be the most important thing, or what would be most useful for you? And I thought the best thing would be for me to share, the experience we had. We did quite a few shows, and we even managed to do commercials in HDR, which is also very interesting. I'm going to show you some of that as well. Basically, to summarize, when you start working on HDR projects, I think there is one kind of thing you have to understand. The look comes first, okay? What I mean by that is that the old school approach, I call it old school already, but traditional approach, where you would go and shoot and then wait all the way until the end to go and do the grading and create a look, doesn't work for HDR. Simply because, the possibilities, how we can create a look and what we can do with an image in HDR are so large that the chances for us for not getting it right are just too big. You can't risk it, and it's just impossible really for you to kind of use the cinematographer to control image if you're going to leave it all the way until the end. And the chances are that somewhere along the way, somebody, somewhere, is going to make a mistake or is going to take that image in a different direction to what you had in mind when you shot it and how it was supposed to look, are just too large for you to take that risk. So you have to take the control of the image in your hands, and you start with the look. That means the moment you choose your camera, your lenses, your lighting, and you set your first camera tests, you start building and working on the look that you're going to have. And that is basically essential. Every time we worked like that, we found the productions were actually really running smoothly. Which kind of leads to the next subject, why color management? Well, without the color management, you're not going to be able to execute your look. Basically, color management in simplest way means we know what's coming in and what we're going to get out at the end. So effectively, I'm going to kind of quote a term from one of our colleagues who said, Dado, we're working from set to set, which means from film set to TV set. And the color management is that link that basically when you are on set, what you see on your monitor and what you measure on your histograms and waveform monitors is exactly what's going to appear on the viewer's monitors when they view it at home. And it's really possible to do that. The HDR technology allows us to control how this image is going to appear on people's screens. And also, we have managed to simplify it so that it doesn't really slow down production. It doesn't really make it very difficult. It just becomes another thing that we track. The same way how you were recording audio and timecode, you're just recording your color decisions. That's all. There are some advantages. I want to try to kind of do it. And number one is that you get the superior image quality, because if you do pay attention to how your look is already on set, you really find that you go back into the mode of shooting the way we used to shoot on film, where you were really paying attention to every look, because your monitor is not going to lie. It's going to tell you, hey, this is the look. So you end up tweaking your lighting a little bit more. You end up working a little bit more with your crew to kind of get that shot right in the camera. It enhances creativity, certainly, because you now have a set of digital tools available to you that help you get to the look. Out of the box, no camera is perfect. You can say, oh, I like this camera more than the other, but we can generally say no camera out there gives you a perfect image. Every camera, digital especially, needs some tweaking and some, doing something to it before you get that look that you want. So now when you deploy the digital tools, like what we normally used in color grading, these tools allow you to finesse that image. So basically, you kind of become a little bit more creative. You can do a little bit more with that image. There is also an important factor. Look, you're going to be shooting for HDR, but the reality is that 98% of people will see that show in SDR today. So your SDR look is probably one that is as important as HDR. Actually, people will be seeing only SDR shows, but you will be focusing so much in making that HDR look absolutely fantastic. So unless you have a link between the two, unless you're able to control both, it's not going to work. You're going to end up, maybe having a great-looking HDR show that is going to look absolutely, disastrous in SDR. So you have to basically know that, and another thing as well, you will monitor on set SDR. We had maybe one production that allowed us budget for a big HDR monitor. And also, that HDR monitor was very impractical, because the moment we were in the bright sunlight, we were not really able to see much, it wasn't really working for us. Oh, we have an HDR monitor, now we know what's going on. So we actually really resorted back to monitoring SDR, but measuring to what values are going to be in HDR, what we're going to get at the end. So that kind of control of both masters is just, has to exist. And another thing as well, what color management does to you is gives you a great amount of flexibility. The problem is this, you might be setting your look on set and think okay, this is perfect, but once the things are cut, they're put in place, the scene in front can totally affect the look of the coming scene. Maybe the editor picked some shot from something completely else, turned it around and put it in the cut. So those looks you applied, they don't really match, they don't work. We have to rework them. And the color management, because it's only little metadata, it's not really baked into the look, is very flexible. We can just, undo it and start from the beginning again. It's not that we are really locking ourselves in, 100% to what we shot on set and made the look has to be like that. No, we have this flexibility to finesse it when we come to the final grade. And absolutely, this is one for the producers amongst you, because I know that you guys are going to be happy about this fact. It does actually save time. We grade an episode for Netflix in about 4 days. And I think we achieved quality that we used to achieve what we used to do in an independent film in about 2 weeks. So I would grade an indie in about 2 weeks. Sometimes I had to do it in a week or something like that. But yeah, with a good color-managed show, we create HDR and SDR grade in 4 days grading for an hour episode, which I think you will all agree it's actually, incredible time saving later for the post. The pinnacle of our effort to make this whole process of color management simpler, and was the software we developed called Color Lab, that we basically let DITs and cinematographers use. It's not like a software product you go to shop to buy. It's just basically part of the service. And we just basically didn't have any other choice but to go and figure out, how to do it best. And we found a partner in France who basically helped us build this software. And I would invite you, if you ever have an opportunity to maybe, or interested to see how this works, to come and see me at the back. We have a little HDR lounge where we're showing, some, examples to what the software can do. However, talking about the innovation and talking about what's new and how things work the best, I kind of wanted to, just maybe make you aware of a camera called Varicam, and especially one model that they just announced called Pure. And I am all for innovation. I'm all for new tools and new things that are making our life better image quality, and so on. And this is one product that I came across. I was very suspicious when the cinematographer I worked with came up with it. So it was a TV show called Guilt, and it was shot by Theo van de Sande here in London. He's an American Society of Cinematographers DP, but he was brought in and he said, I want to shoot with this camera. And we were all a little bit like, where is Alexa? What's going on? You're sure this camera we're going to use? And we ended up working it, and I was really, really surprised to how it worked. And this camera had some incredible features that allowed us to actually work really smart for color management. So just so you know, when Theo actually, and we were doing all the live grading, and everything on set, and the production didn't have a 1 hour overtime, and Theo was grading an episode in 2 days. Have a look at this camera, because I think from the feature, it's a very unique. It's something that we were looking for a long time, to find, number one, is this kind of the dual latitude, kind of that they have. It's very interesting. It might confuse you to begin with, but when you actually try it, you'll see actually how it works. It has a ability to work on a very high ISO, but still give you a very low noise image, effectively. And this noise is the biggest problem when you work in HDR, because it becomes incredibly visible. Once you stretch image on a bright monitor, even the smallest amount of noise is visible. So that high ISO helps you keep your image a little bit cleaner when you work on a low light. And and also the modern cinematography, the kind of the HDR looks, they do dark shots, they do low lights, they do nights to be night. So it's nice to actually have a low light shots that are clean. So that camera is actually very, very interesting. And it's interesting how some cinematographers are using it today. One of the cinematographers I worked with, called Vanya Chernyul, he used it on a show recently in the US, and it was amazing actually to see that he was able to light most of the show with the practicals and with just the 1 or 2 Kinoflow celebs, and that was all lighting pretty much he was losing on set. It was like a 70s, dark and gritty story, but it was incredible how much that high ISO helped him. But what really is interesting is this kind of uncompressed 120 frames. We could not get 120 frames out of any 4K camera, but now to get it in uncompressed format, it's great. You do have to count that we're going to have a little bit more data, but I think it's actually really good. But the reason why I personally also like this camera is that we have managed to integrate inside the camera. There is a internal grading engine, and we have managed to integrate our software with it so that we can totally wirelessly control the look of the camera and also record all the metadata to what look we were using in the camera. So the human error is gone. There is no DIT there that has to rename the lookup tables and the CDLs or anything like that. There is no wire or extra wire to load the look. And it's just very, very, very simple and rock-solid workflow. So literally, when the material comes to the lab for transcoding, it just works, everything matches, because camera has this internally recorded all of the metadata to what color we used it and so on. So it makes the workflow just simple. 4K, which is what channels want, uncompressed, the image is absolutely clean, and the color management is, actually the show we did in the US, you had a second AC operate the color decisions because it was some funny policy by HBO that didn't allow us to have a DIT, so we had to call him second AC. These are the shows that have been shot with that camera, quite a few, but I think, pictures, talk probably best, so maybe, Tony, would you mind just playing the little sizzle reel from the Varicam so we can just have a look what this camera looks like? Now, I want to show you a little bit, basically how, we work with this camera and, how this kind of color managed workflow integrates really seamlessly without, any difficulty into the workflow. For this purpose, I'm going to use a project we did recently and we shot in South Africa, and it was basically a commercial, and it's very interesting. It's a HDR commercial for the consumer television for Panasonic. So this year they have launched an incredible, OLED screen like in HDR, and they asked us to, help in basically, making sure that they have the superior picture quality for it. So we did, and we shot a commercial with them. This is basically a shot, and this is like how we would work with the color lab. So we would kind of, set the shot. Just before we would start shooting, we'd say, okay, let's go and set like a little test shot. So this was one of the scenes. And then what I would do is I would then quickly go with the production and create using Color Lab several versions of that look. So this is, by the way, all happening on set. I'm literally on my laptop sitting next to the DP, director, and is next to us, and even a client looking at a grading monitor, just a normal reference monitor. And they would look at these images while I would tweak the look for them and just press the button and send it to the camera. So I'd say, hey, look, this is maybe a little Martian look. This is maybe a one look, that would be more like a sci-fi feel, and this is something that comes in between. And then I would then flick between these three, and they'd say, okay, I think this one is the probably one we go. We'd press the button and start rolling. Now, I want to show you basically how, I actually create this look and how it's possible to really do this very quickly. So this is the Color Lab software, and what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to basically go and select first the camera. So this is a Panasonic Vlog, and the output, which is the the Rec 709 extended. And then what I can do is I can go into profiles, and in profiles I have for example, very interesting a collection of film stocks that we got from a company in Germany that used to service film scanners. What they did is they had to calibrate the scanner, and they gave us the density, reading data. So we actually managed to extract the actual negative readings from the different film stocks that we were then able to integrate into these shots. So for example, this is the Vision 3 stock, which is the one that actually we ended up using on this shot. Then the next thing would be maybe we would tweak the shot a little bit more, maybe make it a little bit whatever, shiny, a little bit warmer. But also we could go deeper into it and maybe say, well, we like these blue tones to be stronger. So we could then just go and saturate a little bit the blues. So if I go and lift the saturation of them, I can make the blues higher. Or maybe the golden colors need to be a little bit more extracted as well, and so on. And then once we are happy with this, we can just basically say, send this LUT, and violently the LUT would get loaded into the camera. Bam, everyone ready? Let's go, let's start shooting. Now, what's really interesting about this software is when it comes to grading, what I can do is I can just go to the output looks, and I can just basically select what output I want. So the same look gets just translated into the HDR version of that same look. I mean, I have an option to go, for example, for cinema version or this one. And then, when I'm going to say, okay, give me the HDR, I right mouse click on it, and I say, send this look to resolve. This is the software that I use for grading, and I can just basically seamlessly integrate it, and we can start work, and straight away we have that look that was in SDR on set. Now I can perfectly translate it, start grading it in HDR. And this is that link what I'm talking about, how color management is important, because being able to produce both SDR and HDR masters in parallel is really essential. It's really what has to happen, and it can't slow down production. Tony, could you maybe play that commercial, that I have? Maybe let's see. We're going to have to see the SDR version. I'm afraid I have a HDR monitor at the back that we can see as well. But let's go and see what the final result looked like. Great. That was the visual effects, by the way, were done by Framestore. I think they did a fantastic job on that. And it was also great, for us to integrate the HDR workflow with the Framestore's visual effects department. One kind of thing that one could ignore when they start production, how important is that part as well. To summarize, this presentation, I would like to kind of share with you, a few things. Number one, I think that HDR is not a thing. It's nothing to be worried or scared about. It's just a bunch of numbers and settings, effectively. But it's up to you to take this beautiful technology and make something with it. It's actually useless without your input and your willingness to do something really creative and fantastic with it. And it's a great tool that you can mold to your liking. Nobody is saying that your HDR movies have to be bright and colorful. You don't have to do this. We had plenty shots in HDR that were very dark and moody, and it worked absolutely fine. No one's saying that your films are not going to be cinematic because they're in HDR. No one's saying that you can't shoot on film and still deliver in HDR. It's totally possible. This is just a beautiful new thing that we have to embrace as filmmakers and make really, really something great with it. And I would really encourage you, to kind of open yourself to it. Don't be like scared of any new technology or anything like that. And don't get the technical people who sell you calibration software or some stuff like that, force you to know what it is. Many people will just read the white papers and preach to what technology is, but only when you sit in front of the tool, in front of the monitor, and you take it, you will be able to create and do something with it. So this is really like my kind of, general comma, is that I really want to, see what tools are out there, how we can use them and make them, more useful for us to create better picture, even, just the audience to enjoy and to be like, to get the emotion, to get the story, to feel that, things are moving and developing in that direction. Also, I'd like to say that there is another development out there which is really available to you. I'm a big supporter of it. It's absolutely free and open source color science called ACES. It's developed by American Cinematographer Society, but it's an incredible tool, especially once you start working with HDR. You'll find actually that it's one of those things that you are going to need to get even higher precision in your image. Something that they can't promote because they are not for profit organization, but I think myself as a kind of colorist that has been using this on many jobs, I can only say that it's just adds to the final image quality immensely. So have a look at it and try to explore it. It's another little tool that is going to help you, especially in combination when you start working with HDR.